everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. And happy Friday. I'm Brandon Waltons, managing editor of Texas Scorecard, and this is the headline. We're going to talk about a few of the big stories from this big news week today. But first, right now we're going to talk about some shutdowns happening across the state of Texas. Later, we're going to have a video interview with Jon Francis, who was at the march, the rally in Washington, D.C. earlier this week. We're going to ask him what went on there. And then lastly, at the end of the show today, we're going to talk about the upcoming legislative session in the state capitol starts on Tuesday. So please, if you're watching us live right now, drop your questions. We'd be happy to let you know what that's going to look like. Then those the 140 days begin. But first, we thought lockdowns were over. A few weeks ago, Governor Greg Abbott made headlines nationally when he criticized California and said that no longer was Texas going to be shutting down. Well, in the weeks since then, due to executive orders issued by Governor Greg Abbott, you've got 149 of Texas's 254 counties being placed under increased restrictions. That means places that were able to be open up to 75% capacity have had that ratcheted down to 50%. It means bars and counties where they were allowed to operate have been forced to close down. It also means that elective medical procedures have had to be halted as well. And these are the places where most Texans live. This is the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. This is Harris County, the biggest county. It's got Houston, of course, San Antonio, Galveston area. And now, you're seeing a lot of Texans say, well, that doesn't really make sense. And you haven't seen Governor Greg Abbott out here talking about these executive orders, but you have to remember, these were orders that he issued back in September and October. So he's not actually issuing the orders day to day. Instead, it's defaulting to orders he issued previously. But of course, he has the power to stop those orders right now. And up to this point, he hasn't done so. And so as it remains right now, despite saying that lockdowns were over, that lockdowns were a thing of the past, you actually have heightened shutdown restrictions in most counties in the state of Texas. This is something that the mainstream media has pretty well ignored in Texas, but we've got the story up at TexasScorecard.com. So far, Governor Greg Abbott has not responded to any of our questions about whether or not he plans on rolling those restrictions back. Now, earlier this week, hundreds of thousands of people descended on Washington, D.C. to march in Washington, D.C. For President Donald Trump. Jon Francis, a Cisco businessman, former candidate for State House of Representatives here in Texas, actually made the trip to Washington, D.C. Yesterday, I spoke with him about what happened, what he actually saw, and what he thinks the next steps going forward are. Take a look. Jon, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. And you just got back from Washington, D.C. for the Save America March, something a lot of folks saw on television. First of all, what made you go? Why did you want to go join the millions of folks down there?
Yeah, I don't know about millions, but there were hundreds of thousands. It was the biggest group that I've ever been a part of. And it was pretty exhilarating, actually. And the reason is that, there were every type of person that you could imagine was there, from young to old, every race, every color, every creed. And it was exciting to be able to watch the president. We got to hear him speak, and it was awesome. I wanted to go primarily. My family, my wife Jody and I went, and we wanted to make sure that the president knew that we supported him and gave him some support, and we've been praying for him. And frankly, we're so disgusted with the vast majority of our elected officials. We feel strongly, it's obvious that there's so much fraud going on in this election. We feel like that it was stolen from the president, and we're just disgusted and terrified at the same time, especially with Georgia. Everybody was saying, I think we're going to win Georgia, and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think so, because if they're willing to steal and have so much fraud for a national election, what makes you think they're going to stop there when they've got the ability to have all three branches of government? I'm kind of pessimistic on it, and it turned out that I was right.
Well, as you noted, eventually the Electoral Congress did certify those electoral votes but they had to do so in the early morning of Thursday because of some protests, some mob, whatever term you want to describe, going to the Capitol. What did you expect that? What was that like actually being on the ground?
No, so we started out in the ellipsis right in front of the White House. That's where the president spoke. And like I said, that was such an amazing experience. I mean, they were just flag waving patriots. And eventually everyone walked over to the Capitol. And I did notice ahead of time, actually, before the president even stopped speaking, there were large numbers of people, and I didn't think about this until this morning, but it's the truth. Large numbers of people were leaving the president's speech early to walk down to the Capitol. I thought that was kind of, in fact, I actually thought, gee, that's kind of rude. They're leaving while he's speaking. And there were a lot of upset people. I will tell you that. I mean, I would call it at the president's speech. I would say that people were respectful and very upset at the same time. And I could not have been prouder on the walk over to the Capitol to literally be chanting. And this was my goal. My goal was to get close enough so that our elected officials could literally hear us chant, "We, the people, we, the people." And it was loud. It was amazing. I mean, imagine 100,000 people plus walking down and chanting that. And it was exciting. It made me feel great to be part of a group that is not going to stand up for the fraud that's going on. And, at the same time, it's kind of terrifying being in a group that size. I mean, I know enough to know that crowds can be a problem. I mean, if there's my head was on a swivel, I can tell you that, just because I wasn't sure, if Antifa might show up, right, or frankly, a car backfiring or something. People might think it's a gunshot. Who knows? So it is kind of scary being there, but I felt like that it was worth it just to show the president that we support him. That's why we went.
Some have said that, to your point about Antifa, some have said that perhaps Antifa was at least partially responsible for some of the more raucous protesting we saw in the afternoon.
Yeah, I would say that they're responsible in that they are one of the primary reasons that people were so upset. Mm-hmm. I do not believe that there were infiltrators, if that's what you're alluding to. I've heard that some. I will tell you this. I don't trust anything that's in the media. Nothing. I don't trust any of them because I was there. I saw what was going on, and the misreporting. What gets reported and what actually happened are two different things. Now, I will say this too. It was a gigantic crowd to the point that I couldn't even estimate how many people were there. And the reason is that you couldn't see one end of the crowd to the other. So I can tell you that it was packed. And I can tell you that literally everywhere I saw, in every direction, there were thousands of people. But I can't tell you how big the crowd was because it was so big, you literally couldn't see enough to know. You can't count. And frankly, no one has that experience to be able to go, oh, there were 400,000 people there. I don't know. I would estimate, and this is just a total guess, but I would say at least a couple 100,000 people. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I was thrilled to be there. And the primary reason is that I'm so proud of Donald Trump. And I just want him to know that. And I think he got that message. And that was the entire goal. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I wanted it to get reported. I wanted there to be a big enough of a crowd to where the media couldn't stifle it. But I really feel like too that the actions of a small number of people made those at least 200,000 people. We all got lumped in together, and it's unfair and it's inaccurate. These were respectful people. I had my aunt there. She's in her 70s. She walks slowly, and we took our time getting up to the Capitol because she walks kind of slow. But she had a Trump flag draped around her like a cape. I could not have been prouder of her. And there were dozens, and I mean there were so many older folks that were there that are just ticked, and they want election integrity. And it's worth raising your voice. It's worth making the trip. At least it was for us. We were able to do it, and I know a lot of people were not, and that's fine. but we were, and so we did it. In fact, I was there 3 weeks ago as well. We went to the Jericho March, and quite frankly, I was kind of disappointed with the numbers of people that showed up, and I was able to go to that too, and so we went. In fact, I took my 2 youngest children with us on that trip, decided to leave them home on this one because we interacted with Antifa. We saw these people on the streets of our nation's capital, and it's terrifying. And so we opted to not bring the kids back this time. But I got to tell you, I had my head on a swivel, and because it for a number of reasons, it could have been dangerous just in any crowd. You go to the ball game and it could be dangerous. And I've never experienced that number of people before. But it was exhilarating and it was terrifying all at the same time. But I felt like that it was important enough to go. I wanted to show the president that we support him. And I could not be prouder of that man.
One last question to maybe put you on the spot a little bit. Obviously, we've seen that, as I mentioned, the Electoral College votes were certified by Congress on Thursday. What now? What should those folks who made that trip, or people who have been really paying attention to this, what should they be focusing their attention on now?
My biggest takeaway, and we had this thought on the way back home, but I really think that Donald Trump should, first of all, I think it's over. Unfortunately, I hate saying that, but I really do. At this point, it's over. But I think that what he should do right now is to start a media company and start a social media platform, a cross-platform network of actual reporters, actual honest, because I think the reason people are so upset, I know I am, it's because we're being silenced, and it's very upsetting. Free speech has been curtailed, and these people are overtly doing this to us, including the president. It's overt. And so I think that if he started a social media network, an actual cable news network with actual reporters that just told the truth. I'm not saying make it a conservative network. All you have to do is just tell the truth. I don't trust any of the media. They're all biased. They all have an agenda, and I'm disgusted by it. And I think a lot of the people that showed up at the rally, that was a large part of it. You know, it's one thing to disagree with who gets elected. It's another to think that it was fraudulently obtained, and that we have a media in this country that is the equivalent to the Russian Pravda, which I don't know if you're familiar with that. That it's the official media agency in Russia, and it literally in Russian means truth. Right. It doesn't get any more fake news than that. But the truth is, we've got that in the United States. It's all fake news, every bit of it. I don't trust any of them. And so I just feel like that at the flip of a switch, Donald Trump, I think literally one of the things that I think that he did for this country that is the most significant is that he exposed the deep state. He exposed the mainstream media for who and what they are. And I could not be prouder of him. And I really think that that it would be an enormous success overnight. He had, what was it, 80 million voters. And I think these people are starving. I know I am, for actual news and for freedom and liberty and the First Amendment. And so I think he would be enormously successful. I'm going to encourage him to do that. If I can reach him, I would love to tell him that. Please start this thing, because, and he's a smart man. And if anybody can pull it off, I mean, honestly, I think it's widely acknowledged that he's a media genius. And I think he could pull it off and make a lot of money in the process. I couldn't be prouder of him. And I just want to encourage him to do that, because I think it would give everyone hope. And quite frankly, you know, I've always taken the stand that no, you know, we need to stick with a two-party system. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure anymore after what I saw yesterday. You know, there are some good Republicans, but my gosh, there are some people with an R behind their name that I can't tell, or they call themselves a Republican. My God, we have that here we have it here in Texas too. Texas, you know, people think that, oh, Texas is so conservative. Not really. It's the truth. The truth is that there are a lot of people that have an R behind their name that, quite frankly, don't share the values that I share. They don't support any of our priorities, and I'm not even sure they support any of the platform. They certainly don't publicly say that they support the platform. So I don't know. I think our party has left us. We're still standing here. And I think maybe it's time to start considering some other options.
It's something that a lot of people are going to be considering in the coming days, coming weeks, and coming months. Thank you again so much for speaking with me, Jon. Glad you're back and safe here in Texas.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you again so much to Jon for sitting down with us and sharing his experience. And I also want to say a quick shout out before we move on here to some of y'all watching live right now on Facebook. We've got, of course, Ruth watching from Cisco. Ruth, I think, was also there with Jon. James from Midland, Jerry from Granbury, Joel Starnes tuning in from Tarrant County. Thank you all for joining us. We got one more big story this week. And it's actually looking forward to next week. In just, 4 days now, on Tuesday, January 12th at noon, the Texas legislature is set to reconvene in the Texas state capitol. The Texas state capitol actually just reopened its doors earlier this week. It's been shut since March. And there were a lot of questions going into this upcoming session about whether or not concerned citizens, grassroots activists, any Texan would really be allowed to go in, except for the lawmakers, of course. Now, it does look like people are going to be able to go in and go participate in the process, but it's going to look a little bit different if these opening day protocols are any indication. Now, the senators and members of the House of Representatives both are going to vote on their own rules in the first few days of the session. But for now, you've got the Senate and the House laying out what their guidelines are going to be for the first day, which can kind of give you an indication of probably what things are going to look like for the remainder of the 140-day long session. This week you had Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick announcing the protocols for the Senate, and no surprise to most anybody, it looks like it's going to be socially distanced, okay? So they're going to be limiting seating in the gallery. Press, who is usually traditionally on the floor, is going to be in the gallery. Tickets are going to have to be reserved by the members, and that process has already played out. Most interestingly, all the senators and staff and guests that are in the gallery are going to all submit to rapid coronavirus testing. Now, how does this compare to what's going on in the other chamber? Well, actually, last month in December, the Texas House announced its own guidelines, and a lot of these look pretty similar. Essentially, the ceremony is going to be shorter. There's going to be restricted seating in the gallery right there. But a big difference is that while in the Senate, they've not said anything about masks, and in fact, some sources have said that the members will not be required to be wearing masks. In the House, it looks like that's going to be different, and they are going to be ensuring and mandating that the members wear masks on that day when they're sworn in. As far as being involved in the process as it goes forward, the first 60 days of the legislative session are going to be, of course, a little slower, and perhaps even slower this session. Remember, the House and the Senate are not able to pass legislation in the first 60 days unless Governor Greg Abbott declares it an emergency item. Now, usually those days are filled with resolutions, and they'll still come in and they'll wave to the gallery and to the groups that are there. This session, some rumors have actually suggested that perhaps they won't be meeting quite as often. But the first week is going to be very, very telling as the House and the Senate debate on their rules. Will be very telling as to how much input they're going to allow citizens to have physically in the Capitol, be it in committee hearings or be it in the legislature themselves. So happy to answer any questions anybody has on that. Actually, looking through the questions here, Joel Starnes asked, what rules are we wanting changed to increase transparency in the legislative process, talking about the rules in the House. Well, I don't know about me. Some of the rules I've seen, some conservatives talk about and have tried in the past, are rules that would ultimately allow legislation not to be bottled up by the Speaker. We've seen in previous sessions that some priority conservative legislation, be it things like constitutional carry, pro-life legislation, bills like that, religious freedom, have been able to be bottlenecked in the process, be it in a certain committee or be it by something that the Speaker has done. I've heard some rumors and we've seen some failed attempts in the past to try to open that process up to where members can actually vote to bring a bill to the floor. It'd be interesting to see if that one's brought up again, but that's the sort of rule change I would expect to at least be filed or brought up by a given member. Angie asks, will the lawmakers seek to end all the unconstitutional mandates across the state, both at the state level and the local level? Certainly, ending executive overreach has been a big topic. It's certainly a big topic by a lot of lawmakers going into this session. You've got some bills filed already. Matt Krause has some legislation. They all kind of do different things. Brian Slayton, incoming member, has said that his very first bill is going to be dealing with ending the executive overreach of the governor. So certainly going to be a hot button issue. Certainly expect a number of bills to be filed. The question is going to be whether or not that makes it through the process. Remember, that is now a legislative priority of the Republican Party of Texas, and so we'll see what the Republican legislature decides to do. Well, if you have any more questions and you're watching this after the fact, you have questions about what the session is going to look like, we're going to be talking specifically about some of these issues over the next few weeks here on The Headline, but please feel free to drop your questions right there in the comments, and I can get to them after the show. For right now, please rest up. Have a good weekend. On Tuesday, the state legislature reconvenes, and it's time for citizens, for us to be watching vigilantly. So have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning into The Headline from Texas Scorecard. You can catch old episodes of the show as well as many of our other programming at texasscorecard.com. And be sure to join us next Friday at 11 a.m. live right here on Facebook.